the status quo, but doesn't have any particular interest in a peace settlement that does not address the claims and concerns of the refugees. That's important to remember. Then, of course, there are all the 5 million plus diaspora Palestinians. Hard to count, but could be done. Only a portion of these are refugees who are registered with UNRWA, given the restrictive and very tiny, actually, the restrictive way in which UNRWA has always registered the refugees. In other words, back on a certain day in 1949 or 1950, if a Palestinian refugee family was in one of the 3 places where UNRWA services were being offered, and many of them weren't, many of them had already gone down to the Gulf or gone to Egypt or gone elsewhere, if you were in Lebanon or Jordan or Syria and you could demonstrate your need, then you got onto the UNRWA rolls and became an UNRWA registered refugee. Well, there were Palestinians in the diaspora at that time who were not in those places. There were Palestinians in those places who on that day didn't have a demonstrated need or were unable to demonstrate their need. And then later, perhaps, their family would run out of money because they had always thought that being in exile was temporary. So, it's like these Iraqi refugees you read about more recently. They go to Syria, they have some money, they go to restaurants, they have fun, and then suddenly they realize they're not going home and their money has run out. The fact that a person is not a registered refugee does not cancel his claims and rights as a Palestinian. And these claims and rights and these individuals who are in the diaspora need to be included in the settlement, because there's no way you can sell it to the rest of the Palestinians without. Look at it this way. Every single Palestinian who is currently resident in the West Bank or Gaza has many immediate family members who are in the diaspora because of the way that Israel has squeezed those Palestinian communities. If you're in Nablus or in Rafah, you will have, 3 of your 6 brothers are living in the Gulf or in Europe or in Argentina. If you're living in Jerusalem, the same. So the Palestinians who are currently resident in the occupied territories certainly won't feel they can sign a final peace agreement unless the interests of the people who are not only their compatriots but also their brothers and cousins are addressed. It's going to be quite a selling job. In fact, a majority of the Palestinian people are in diaspora. Moving right along, the position of Salam Fayyad and Fayyadism, as it's called by Tom Friedman. Quick thing to remember, in the first instance, the Palestinian Authority is only an interim authority. It actually is the Palestinian Interim Self-Governing Authority. It's just this little thing that was set up for 5 years after Oslo. Its achievements and structures exist wholly at Israel's whim and can be destroyed by Israel at any moment, as has already happened 2 or 3 times. The West Bank and Gaza are still occupied territory. Salam Fayyad is trying to incubate a state administration there, and, absolutely good luck to him. The prisoners' document of 2006 called the interim Palestinian administration the nucleus of the future state. And I think that was a very good way to look at it. But it is not the future state. The negotiations, of course, are not carried out by the interim Palestinian administration. The negotiations are carried out by the PLO, which is the pan-Palestinian governance body. Salam Fayyad evidently has some political ambitions, including perhaps to succeed Abu Mazen as president of the PA, although I think he has more powers as prime minister of the PA than what he would have as president, especially since the US pushed those reforms to give the prime minister more powers, if you remember, at the time that Arafat was the president. But these ambitions of his bring him up against Fatah people much more than they bring him up against Hamas people, certainly in the first instance, because his ambitions are pursued in the West Bank. And I think it's a mistake to say that he is necessarily in a natural alliance with Fatah in any way. In fact, some of the early things that happened after the Fatah conference was one of the notable things that happened was this very unseemly battle for control of the Palestinian television station, where I guess Salem Fayyad wanted to reach a deal with Yasser Abdurabu, and there was a question of how many hours or how many minutes per day Abu Mazen was getting on the television station as opposed to Salem Fayyad. And I'm not sure how that one came out, but you can see them tussling for power over various institutions already. The desire of Salem Fayyad, as of the vast majority of Palestinians, is for an independent Palestinian state with currently occupied East Jerusalem as its capital. Now, he and the Hamas people and everybody else that I have talked to spell out that independent means, very importantly, that they can build their own direct economic links with Jordan, Egypt, and the rest of the global economy, which is very different from the present. At present, Israel controls all the links that Palestinian businessmen in the West Bank or Gaza can have with the outside world, and collects the customs, sits astride all those economic links. So independence, if you look at Fayyad's program for his government that was published last month, he makes a big point about building the infrastructure for this independent economy. The port, the airport, the roads, the connections with Jordan, Egypt, and the rest of the Arab world and the rest of the global economy. Not surprising, you know, the guy is an economic globalizer. And I just want to end, perhaps, by coming back to the centrality of getting real sovereignty, the importance for the Palestinians and for regional peace, I would even say world peace, of the Palestinians getting real sovereignty over key parts of Jerusalem. This is an absolute bottom line for Palestinians everywhere. If you go into a Palestinian home in Brazil or Abu Dhabi, refugee camp in Lebanon, you do not see little images of the Muqata in Ramallah. What you see is the Dome of the Rock. That's what it means to be Palestinian. And Jerusalem, Palestinian Jerusalem, is under huge threat right now, as we sit here, as the diplomats sit in the United Nations. This government in Israel and these activist settlers who have been planting their settlements in the heart of Palestinian Jerusalem and digging their tunnels under the Dome of the Rock, any moment could ignite a massive, people talk about a third intifada. It would be a massive crisis for the region, for the United States, and for the world. That's why Obama needs to be clear that this is a U.S. interest he's pursuing, U.S. interest in the region and in the world, and can't just let Netanyahu control the whole process. Can the Palestinian political portion of the negotiation puzzle be put together? Yes, I believe it can, if U.S. negotiators are adept and inclusive, as George Mitchell was in Northern Ireland. It can be put together if the U.S. government abandons and reverses its efforts to overthrow the party that won the free and fair election of January 2006. That was Hamas. It can if the U.S. also actively urges other parties in the region to work with rather than against Hamas, recognizing that some of them have their own parochial reasons to work against Hamas. That includes Egypt. It includes, to a certain extent, the Jordanians. If this round of negotiations fails, then it won't just be Abbasism and Fayyadism that will disappear from the Middle East. the whole region will like